I think JD Vance destroyed the debate and is probably the future of the Republican Party and maybe even the future of politics moving forward, especially for the younger generation. Now, Tim Walz, I think he did the best he could have done. Like, given the circumstances, he was taking a extreme far left agenda and trying to liken it to your average everyday American and not seem so extreme. I think he was trying to pull that far left view to the center, which to me seems like an impossible task. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Rising Podcast. I'm Trey. Today, we're going to dive into last night's debate. It was billed as the most consequential debate of all time. And for me, I've seen some people saying it wasn't that big of a deal. It's just a vice president debate. Everyone already knows what they think about either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. They already have their opinions made, and the vice presidents aren't going to be a deciding factor for anyone. But I've never seen this much hype around a vice president's debate as this one. And I think this one probably, I haven't looked at the numbers, which that's probably something I should have looked at, but I bet this was one of the highest viewed vice presidential debates ever. And for those that watched it, I think it actually will make a big difference for those people on the fence. I think there's a lot of independents that probably watched it that are like, I don't really like Donald Trump, but I'm definitely not siding with the left, that heard JD Vance, that are definitely going to be Team Trump now. Overall, if I had to say who won it, I think JD Vance destroyed the debate and is probably the future of the Republican Party and maybe even the future of politics moving forward, especially for the younger generation. We've definitely seen this huge influx of liberal policies all over the place with the youth, whether it's with furries or transgender stuff or what they're teaching in schools. And I think most kids are kind of sick of it, and most normal thinking people. And so what was really awesome to see was somebody 40 years old who looked like a leader, who felt like a leader, who was confident, that portrayed himself so confidently, but not aggressive, that people are like, yeah, I could get behind that guy. I think that's somebody I could vote for, and he makes a lot of sense and is reasonable. I think a lot of areas where Donald Trump, where people watch him and hear the things that he says, you're like, I don't know. This guy's a little crazy. Seems pretty extreme. But the way that JD Vance went about even the things that they disagreed upon between him and Tim Walz, I think was extraordinary. But what I think was even better, and I think it was great by both JD Vance and Tim Walz, is they were able to find common ground. There was multiple times where JD Vance was like, hey, that's a great point, Tim. I think I agree with the same thing. But then he would go and say how he was going to do something different or what made him a better candidate, really focusing on the policy. Now, Tim Walz, pretty much every conservative outlet is saying that he was just terrible. I think he did the best he could have done. Given the circumstances, he was taking a extreme far left agenda and trying to liken it to your average everyday American and not seem so extreme. So although he dodged basically every single question that he was asked, I think he was trying to pull that far left view to the center, which to me seems like an impossible task, and present it in a way that most people could understand and even try to have gotcha moments. The only gotcha moment I can think of that Tim Walz had that was really in his favor was if JD Vance thought that Donald Trump won the election in 2020 and JD Vance kind of danced around the question. I thought his response was really good. If you look back at other responses he's given, he said, yeah, Biden won the election. But if you look at all the election interference from social media, Facebook, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and them suppressing all of the information from the Biden laptop, all of the Russia stuff, all of that misinformation, fact-checking stuff that social media did that Zuckerberg's now admitted to, saying he's not going to do ever again, although we'll see about that because there's still a lot of people shadow banned. And I even get things fact checked, which I try not to say anything that's not fact, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. But that was changing the course of the election in 2022. Now he's taking the full Trump stance saying that Trump won the election. So for Tim Walz, the thing that was the worst part was when they called him on being in China during the period of the changeover of power. And he was like, I just misspoke. Yeah, that's that. So he pretty much just said he lied, which isn't like, that wasn't the only thing Tim Walz has ever lied about. Like he lied about his rank in the military, actually going to war, like saying that the ARs that people have in their house are the same ARs that he used on the battlefield, which he was in the National Guard and he never even got deployed. So just like, or like saying he was the head football coach for the high school he coached at or whatever, when he was like the assistant. I don't know what coach he was, but I'd probably have him like as the coach of the punter. Whatever. I don't know what he actually was, but he wasn't the head coach. Just crazy things that like people can fact check now, like as if this is like 19. But I think this is a common thing with politicians right now is they're not used to the internet and they're not used to people just being able to pop up and be like, oh, I found it in 5 seconds. You're lying, which that's what we saw over and over again with Biden and liberals just repeatedly. But that was by far like the cringiest and worst moment for him of the night. Overall, I don't think he was smooth. I think you could tell at times he was trying to think a lot about his answers, and he was coached. They probably had some Hollywood acting coach there teeing him up with all the lines. CBS claims, this was the thing, I laughed a little bit because I don't believe this. So CBS claims that neither of the candidates had access to any of the questions beforehand, which I just have a hard time believing. But the Democrat Party shipped in some acting coaches, gave him the lines, and it looked like, I've been on set a few times, not trying to bolster my acting career or anything, been in a play or two, but it seemed like you're in rehearsal and you're trying not to use your papers and you're off to the side thinking about what you should say. That's what he looked like, but he was on camera the whole time. So I just feel like maybe it's because he's older, I don't know, but had a hard time remembering his lines and definitely got caught up a few times. But like, let's dive into some of the actual issues and what they talked about. And I think there was some really, really, really big wins for JD Vance in terms of the policy for what him and Trump are running on. So the first policy I really want to hit on is the border. I get this from the left all the time where they talk about that conservatives, Republicans in the House had an opportunity to secure the border with the border bill. And they go on and talk about how it's all the Republicans' fault and that they didn't secure the border. Now, one thing that wasn't hit on that I think was a little bit shocked by, they kind of like talked about the border and then brushed right over it, was that this bill literally allows, I've heard numbers from 1,500 to 5,000 illegal immigrants to enter the U.S. every day. So right now, we currently have about that many. There's been there's been about 10 million illegals, a little bit over that actually, a little bit more than 10 million, that have entered the United States illegally since Biden's been in office and Kamala Harris, the border czar. 10 million illegals have entered. And they say that number is declining. I don't think it is. The bill literally allowed 5,000 illegals per day to still enter. So that'd be 5,000 times 365 times 4. That's still 7.3 million illegals coming in every presidential election term. So that doesn't solve anything. Like, it just is. The bill was literally making it not a crime to cross the border illegally and to help illegals to come into the U.S. It's literally incentivizing people from other countries to come in to the U.S. and use our resources. And why I say our resources is because there's another portion of that bill which says that anyone who comes in to the U.S., there should have a lawyer paid for by tax dollars. So they get a public defender to help defend them and make their case on why they should be in the United States. The other thing is saying that we're going to actually help worldwide immigration and pay for worldwide immigration from country to country until people ultimately end up in the United States. So like, where's all that money come from? That's billions and billions and billions of dollars being spent to help people that aren't U.S. citizens. And what it really does is it normalizes people to break the law, enter our country illegally, and let's punish those people who are doing it the right way. So I'm sure everyone watching knows somebody who's come to the US and they've paid thousands and thousands of dollars to do it the right way. Then they get here and they're taxed, and life's extremely hard, and they have to overcome a bunch of different hurdles. What this border bill does is it makes it even worse for them and way better for illegals. So all people are going to do is just chill out by the border and try to enter illegally, use our tax dollars, and that's how it's done. And it's only going to help still drug trafficking, human trafficking. Tim Walz tried to deny that kids are being used as drug mules during the debate, which I thought was shocking. I'm like, you don't have to look very far to figure out that that's actually happening, that kids are being used to traffic drugs, traffic themselves. And then they try to go in and say, oh, but the conservative Donald Trump's border bill wants to separate families. Like the first thing what they want to do is deport all the illegals, separate parents from kids, which just isn't true. I thought JD Vance did a great job at saying like, hey, our goal is to protect Americans and protect families. Like, how about we go ahead and just deport all of the people who've entered illegally that are criminals? Their criminals offenses are outside of just crossing the border illegally. They are documented criminals. There's like 1 million of those. Like, I'm not even just throwing out 1 million like as a high number. Literally, the number is about 1 million criminal illegals are in the U.S. right now. Why don't we just deport those people first and then go down the line of people that are harming our communities? And then lastly, we'll even see if we need to check into deporting other people. But right now, what's happening is people are coming in illegally and it's easier. Families are separating because that's the only way they can do it. So families are literally giving away their kids to the cartel. The cartel's trafficking them across for who knows what. And right now there's over 300,000 missing kids in the US that no one knows where they are or what they're doing. So I think when people talk about the left, there's a lot more we need to talk about other than just, hey, the conservatives didn't approve the border bill. So the next huge point that everyone seems to care about is the economy. And the left, Tim Walz, is gaslighting us. They love to gaslight us on this and talk about how great, let's call it the Harris-Biden administration, has been at boosting the economy. I think people are really quick to forget that over like 12 of the last 16 years have been controlled by Democrats. Okay, so let's just think about that. 12 of the last 16 years, whole 16 years. When was the only time that the U.S. wasn't actually instigating or starting more wars? The 4 years that Donald Trump was president. The other things is he tries to point out how they are spending billions, maybe trillions of dollars to boost the economy with climate control studies and climate control things, because we're going to bring good, clean energy to the United States, like in Minnesota, which he brought up about 199 times of how great Minnesota is, which we all know it isn't. We'll get to that in a second. But how we're bringing all these clean energies and investing trillions of dollars to those and creating all these jobs on energy sources that haven't even been proven and that have been proven aren't productive. Not to mention the waste that comes from creating these energy sources is way worse than the carbon emissions that they always love to talk about. But we won't even get to that. What I thought JD Vance did a killer job of was saying, as they were gaslighting about the economy and how terrible the economy was and how unstable Donald Trump is, was he's like, yeah, like the only time that we weren't in wars was when Donald Trump was president. And if we look at the economy right now, so during COVID, we lost something around like 1 million jobs. Okay. Since Biden and Harris have been in office, I think we've only gained back like 250,000 of those 1 million jobs. And there's still a ton more like missing. And they like to use that number. Like, we've created so many, I think they use the number 250,000 jobs that they've created. He literally said that in the debate. Those aren't real new jobs. Those are jobs from people that had to go work at home, that got fired because they lost their job because of COVID. Now, I think JD Vance did a great job pointing out how well the economy, or bad the economy, is doing under the current regime of like you've been to the store. You don't need me to tell you. Groceries are way more expensive. Gas is way more expensive. They love riding on the healthcare medicine, specifically insulin is way cheaper, which in reality, it's not really that much cheaper. They love writing those things. But if we look back 4 years, we could see literally the cost on everything was way cheaper. You don't need to be an expert fact checker to figure that out. You can just Google what's the current inflation on normal goods like electricity and groceries, and you'll see there's a huge difference between the Harris Biden campaign and when Trump was in office. But yeah, the biggest takeaway that I had about the economy is if anyone watched the debate and they're like, hey, I want to have a stronger economy and have my dollar go further and I want to make the most amount of money possible, JD Vance made it extremely clear that that was only happening under Donald Trump. And let me mind you, the fact checkers were trying to fact check everything JD Vance said, but they couldn't fact check him there because that was the truth. Which brings me to my next point of when the fact checkers try to fact check JD Vance and then he fact checked them back. Like when they tried to correct him on the Ohio, that there were all of the immigrants in Springfield, Ohio were Haitian immigrants that were there legally. And then JD Vance went in to say, yeah, they're considered legal now because they go fill out an app that Kamala Harris grants approval to everyone to be there legally. And they came in illegally. Like he made it extremely clear. These people still came in illegally and they are Haitian and they are eating people's pets. So the last thing I'll really touch on is the abortion thing. And I feel like that's always something that comes up with these debates is the left wants to abort your babies. They don't want you having kids for some reason, although we're rapidly, I guess I could backtrack a little bit. We are rapidly declining in the amount of children being born, and they do have tax credits and cuts that they are proposing for having more kids. I think this is a well-known issue. Everyone knows we need to have more children in the US, but the abortion issue is something that they just won't let go of. And one thing I think JD Vance did an amazing job of was the left always tries to say that Donald Trump and his camp is super against IVF and having other birthing options available to women, which just isn't true. Like that's like one of the biggest lies ever. And like, if people listen to this, it's just as crazy to me that they can't see that the left is gaslighting the entire United States population on pretty much everything. Like it's not hard to go look at these things up anymore, but they lie, like just straight lying to us. So anyways, but what JD Vance did a killer job of was saying, we're pro-family. We want to help people have families. We want to make things easier for families. We want to make the economy better for families. We want to make home ownership easier for families. They both had different opinions on how to accomplish home ownership. And I'll get into that in a second. But what I thought JD Vance did a really good job of is like, it's not anti-abortion or whatever. It's really now more about the family and how can we put a better focus on the family and helping mothers and providing more amenities and services to helping these new mothers who are probably single or whatever. They are in hard circumstances where they don't believe they're fit to have a child. There's actually been a lot of studies done on this that once women are presented with other options, whether it's adoption or coaching on how to be a mom or classes or other resources, the overwhelming majority, there's an organization here in Utah that like 99%, I think, of women they work with that go in to have an abortion, after they work with this group, they decide not to have an abortion and keep their babies. They don't even put them up for adoption most of the time. And so I think that's something we should be talking about more of, is not ostracizing these women and these families that need help, but seeing how we can reach out to them and offer them services and help that is another alternative to having an abortion. Now, talking about the housing crisis, and yeah, there's just a lot to unpack there. They both presented a ton of some different options, and I think they both really do want to solve the issue. It seems they just have very different ways of going about it. With JD Vance, he wants to give you the opportunity to actually be able to afford a home and buy a home and discourage some of these big corporations from buying up all the houses that's currently happening even now in Utah. These like BlackRock buying up all of the available housing. That's why it's so expensive. Everyone wants to say these different things. The reason your houses cost so much is because it's just basic economics, supply versus demand. And there just isn't a lot of supply of affordable houses that people can buy. So There you have it. Whereas what I feel like with Tim Walz, just like with the housing issue and every other issue, it's about control. They want to give you money. They want to give you your house. They want to give you this. They want you to be dependent upon them for energy. They want to be dependent upon them for their food. They want to take up and own everything and be in control of a lot of decisions that you can make. And if you want something, you're going to have to go directly through the government in order to get it, because it's not like their options are going to make houses any cheaper. If anything, I bet it makes them more expensive. That's why you'll need $25,000 from them for your down payment. That's why you'll need a lot of these other things that they're proposing, is because the government will be controlling it and regulating it. And just like with anything else the government has controlled or regulated, I hate to break it to you, but it's a lot worse than if a company or small businesses manage it and run it. So overall, I think it was a great debate. I loved watching it. It was really refreshing to see them actually talk about their points and policies. Is very revealing, and not name call or whatever, be as crazy and outlandish. I don't know if that made for good TV or not. I think a lot of people like to watch the craziness, but as someone who really likes to see what policies they want to enact and where they want to take our country, I found it really refreshing and good to watch. And I think Tim Walz, I feel like he did the best he could given the circumstances. And I think JD Vance walked out as the clear winner and the future in the face of American politics.